Well, today, Governor Gavin Newsom is announcing a new effort to help people in Arizona seeking reproductive care. And Makovic has more on new legislation that could give doctors from Arizona a temporary license to perform abortions here in California. And what's this all about?
Yeah, well, this all follows that Arizona Supreme Court ruling deferring to a Civil War-era law banning nearly all abortions. Today, Arizona House Democrats voted to repeal that law. It's now going to their state Senate. But in the meantime, Governor Newsom is making moves to loosen rules here to try to help people looking to get an abortion. It would allow Arizona doctors to provide abortion access to Arizonans in California. It's a temporary law that would only be in effect through the end of November before a repeal of the current Arizona law might go into effect. Governor Newsom cited data from a pro-abortion rights organization which found that from the 14 states with the most restrictive abortion laws, 160,000 people had to leave their states to get an abortion last year. Newsom said that 65,000 of them were victims of rape.
This would never happen if it was men. We know that. This is really sick what's happening in this country right now. And spare me this freedom gospel. Spare me. Pro-life? Really? What about the rest of life? Governor of Alabama, Tennessee. When they're cutting prenatal programs, they're cutting access to child care.
The California bill is co-authored by East Bay Senator Nancy Skinner and endorsed by the California Women's Caucus. The governor continues to use PAC money to run ads targeting restrictive abortion laws in other states. Here's what's running in Alabama.
Taking action at righttotravel.org.
Now, Alabama is currently considering a bill that would make it a crime to help women travel outside the state in order to receive an abortion. This is part of a larger effort to combat travel bans across the United States. Newsom was behind a similar ad that ran in Tennessee. As for the California bill that would allow Arizona doctors to practice here, it contains what's called an urgency clause, meaning it would take effect upon the governor's signature, but first needs a 2/3 vote in the legislature. We'll be following that for you.
Certainly will. Thank you, Ann. Well, not all Californians, it's worth noting, are in support of expanding abortion access. At the state capitol, hundreds of people rallied for the annual March for Life earlier this week. People gathered at the front steps of the Capitol and then marched through the streets of Sacramento. The event took place after Governor Gavin Newsom announced a proposal to expand abortion rights. Anti-abortion advocates say there are more resources out there than getting abortions.
We shouldn't promote abortion as a means of fixing social ills and in place of social programs and helping people and providing for families.
And today in Washington, a rally for reproductive rights outside the Supreme Court. Women draped in sheets covered in fake blood. The High Court heard arguments about whether Idaho's near-total abortion ban conflicts with a federal health care law. And that federal mandate requires hospitals accepting Medicare to provide stabilizing care to patients experiencing medical emergencies. The Biden administration argues the care includes abortions, even if it goes against state law. The justices right now seem split over the idea of federal overreach versus the potential to put women's health at risk.
Within these rare cases, there's a significant number where the woman is, her life is not in peril, but she's going to lose her reproductive organs. She's going to lose the ability to have children in the future, unless an abortion takes place.
How can you impose restrictions on what Idaho can criminalize simply because hospitals in Idaho have chosen to participate in Medicare?
In just the past 3 months, at least 6 women have been airlifted out of Idaho for emergency abortions. The case marks the first time the justices are reviewing implications of a state ban since overturning the nationwide right to an abortion in 2022. A ruling is expected by the end of June. Still ahead, a Bay Area professor joins us to help break down the implications of the case before the Supreme Court, political, legal, and even medical. Plus, a lot of finger-pointing and blame, how the issue of abortion rights is becoming a key issue ahead of the November election. As we take an in-depth look today at abortion access, we're getting some expert insight into the case being heard by the U.S. Supreme Court today. Justices are considering whether doctors should be able to provide abortions in medical emergencies, even in states with near total bans on abortion. Joining me live now is San Jose State University Associate Professor Grace Howard. Grace, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So how do you think the outcome of the court's decision will impact abortion access in this country? Is it possible that if they do rule that a woman can get an abortion if it's a matter of life and death, could that potentially open the door to, say, soften the restrictions in the states with the strictest laws?
It would only soften restrictions in terms of the exceptions that have been put in place, right? So, for example, in Idaho, they have exceptions if your life is imperiled, but not if your health is imperiled. And that's something that they were debating today. If the court rules that EMTALA does supersede state law, then people in Idaho would be able to have abortions if their health is imperiled. They don't necessarily need to be at death's door in order to access that form of care.
Now, it seems these days you can't run for any political office without having a firm opinion on abortion. But it's been interesting to see how the candidates are handling the subject, notably former President Trump, who on one hand is taking credit for abolishing Roe v. Wade, but yet is also saying that this decision should ultimately be left up to the state. So how does that kind of speak to the temperature of voters in this country when it comes to abortion?
I think that that particular candidate would say anything that he needs to say in order to be elected. But what we have seen since Roe v. Wade was overturned is that abortion keeps winning at the polls. Whenever abortion has been on the ballot, it's won. That people are really, now that they don't have these constitutional protections anymore, seeing what it really means when we don't have these protections in place. We see just how harmful it is. So I think many politicians are taking note that arguing against abortion rights isn't as winning now as it was maybe a few years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch California specifically, Governor Gavin Newsom taking the lead when it comes to trying to gain abortion access for folks in other states. We're seeing ads played in other states, also trying to give access to Arizona doctors to perform abortions here. Why do you think the governor is putting all this effort into this particular cause?
There were probably a few reasons. Some of them may be just an understanding of the realities that people are experiencing, the horrors that people are experiencing when they can't access the care that they need. I think also, though, it seems pretty clear that the governor is positioning himself for a run to maybe some kind of higher office in the future. And so being able to demonstrate that California, and that he in particular was a leader in trying to protect people and offering them care that they can't get elsewhere, is a savvy political move, I'd say.
Yeah, politics is always involved. All right, from politics to let's talk about the medical ramifications of this decision. We've already seen women having to be airlifted to other states because their lives were at risk. What do you think? Could this potentially, more lives could be at risk depending on this decision?
They absolutely could. And we've seen these stories not only coming out of Idaho, but we've also seen them coming from the states around the country, right? That we had a woman sent home from the hospital miscarrying and then arrested because she miscarried at home, right? We've seen people needing to flee the state to get emergency care across state lines. We've seen people having miscarriages in hospital parking lots because the ER was too afraid to treat them. This is not ideal for patients or for healthcare providers. For healthcare providers, they're being put into a position where if they follow the law, they are unable to maintain their ethical obligations to their patients. And this has driven about 22% of Idaho's OBGYNs to leave the profession, to leave the state. They can't do their job appropriately there.
It's a very tough situation for a lot of doctors. All right, Grace Howard from San Jose State University, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris spoke about reproductive rights this week at a campaign event in Wisconsin, and she talked about the role government should or should not play.
And one of the things I do believe is that the majority of us as Americans do have empathy. And what I'm finding is that more and more people will openly agree that one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. Right? If she chooses, she will talk with her priest, her rabbi, her pastor, her imam. But it should not be the government telling her what to do.
And amid the growing wave of more restrictive abortion laws across the country, President Joe Biden is putting blame on his 2024 opponent, former President Donald Trump. And as Nancy Cordes explains, this is shaping up to be a key issue at the polls come November.
This isn't about states' rights, it's about women's rights.
President Biden traveled to Tampa today, just 8 days before Florida's abortion crackdown is set to go into effect. The nation's third most populous state will ban abortions at 6 weeks, a point at which many women still don't realize they're pregnant.
There's one person responsible for this nightmare, and he's acknowledged and he brags about it, Donald Trump.
When it comes to abortion, there is one thing Biden and Trump agree on, that it was Trump's appointment of 3 deeply conservative Supreme Court justices that changed the balance of the court and brought about an end to Roe v. Wade.
We broke Roe v. Wade, and we did something that nobody thought was possible.
Since then, about half of all U.S. states have rolled back reproductive rights. And yet, polling by CBS News shows only a third of Americans say Trump deserves the blame.
He described the Dobbs decision as a miracle. Maybe it's coming from that Bible he's trying to sell.
Biden highlighted the recent spike in pregnant women being turned away from emergency rooms. Caitlin Joshua was turned away by 2 hospitals in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, when she was having a miscarriage.
I was told that I would be sent home with prayers but would not get a diagnosis of miscarriage on paper or verbally.
5 months after Florida's abortion ban goes into effect, voters in that state will have a chance to reverse it. There's a referendum on November's ballot that the Biden team hopes will drive Democratic voters to the polls there. But we should note, Florida has not gone for a Democratic presidential candidate since 2012. Now, still ahead, how some Bay Area women are supporting abortion rights, not at rallies or protests, but by baking.
Is the cake sweeter because you know where the money's going?
I feel better about eating the calories.
And remember, you can watch us anytime, anywhere on our streaming service, CBS News Bay Area. Catch all of our live newscasts plus news and weather updates throughout the day. You can find us on the free CBS News app or on Pluto TV. The threat to abortion rights has inspired people here in the Bay Area to get involved in the cause in some creative ways. Our Itai Hod introduces us to 2 women who are using their baking skills to fight for a woman's right to choose.
In the heart of San Francisco, Nan Wiener is stirring up more than just flour and sugar.
I am making what's called 86 proof chocolate cake.
A retired magazine editor, she's always loved baking. But for the last 2 years, she's been dusting off her old cookbooks for a good cause.
There's many things I care about and work on and follow, but I thought this is the one.
In June of 2022, Nan watched as the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, ending the right to abortion upheld for decades. At that very moment, she knew she had to rise up and do something. Along with longtime friend Zoe Stricker, she started a neighborhood bake sale, donating the money to organizations that support abortion rights.
The response was unbelievable. People were just so excited, and we sold out.
That's when they decided to turn their half-baked idea into a full-blown cottage business called My Bakery, My Choice. After securing the permits, they began taking orders from customers from all over the Bay, with 100% of the proceeds going to vetted organizations that support abortion rights.
Nice.
Today, they're donating $750 to a nonprofit in Tucson, after the Arizona Supreme Court upheld an 1864 law that bans nearly all abortions. But even though they've given more than $10,000 so far, they're not looking to sugarcoat things.
We were asked recently, what's your vision for the future? And I was like, my vision is that we don't have to exist.
Oh my God.
Barbara Grobe drove here all the way from Marin County to pick up a dessert for her family. The fact that it's helping women's rights is just icing on the cake.
Is the cake sweeter because you know where the money's going?
I feel better about eating the calories.
Fighting for women's right to choose, while hoping to make a difference.
And if you'd like to learn more about My Bakery, My Choice, we've posted a link to their website and Itai's story on kpix.com.